What's up, guys? This is Jason Silva, and you're listening to London Real.
London Real, one of the coolest up-and-coming podcasts.
We are at Liverpool Street Station, which is ground zero for the financial district, and it's a Thursday night, which means it's party time if you're a banker. This week on the show, we have futurist, television personality, and performance philosopher Jason Silva. It was a true honor to have this gentleman in my studio. You might have first met Jason by watching some of his 2 or 3 minute videos that he put out on the web for the past 5, 6, 7 years, where he describes with huge enthusiasm the singularity or the convergence of biology and technology, and he has such an enthusiastic spirit that it's just really hard not to like this guy. I, like many of you, probably first met him on the Joe Rogan Experience years ago, and when I found out he was going to stop by London Real, I was chuffed, as we would say in Britain, which is also like psyched if you were saying that in San Diego. So it was so cool having Jason on. He's got a new series on the Nat Geo channel called Brain Games, which I think is super cool because it gives other people a chance to meet him kind of from a television context, and then they can go and watch a bunch of his short videos, which are just super cool. In fact, he's got a new YouTube channel called Shots of Awe, run by some guys called Test Tube out of San Francisco, and they're basically funding and producing even better Jason Silva videos than we saw before. The graphics and the video footage is just top notch. And he has one called Awe that just came out, and of course it logged hundreds of thousands of views, as Jason seems to do. And you watch it, it's hard not to get inspired. So I'm so happy to have Jason on the show this week. I really think you're going to enjoy this. I thought there's no way we could get an hour of the 3 minute Jason we've grown to know and love, but that's pretty much what he gave us. He was on like Donkey Kong the whole time. He was in full effect. He was in the zone, and it was just awesome. You know, I couldn't think of a better way to spend my bank holiday Monday than sitting down with Jason Silva and freerunner Timothy Sheaf. So much positive energy from such young dudes. As I say in the beginning of the podcast, yeah, I don't think I was given that much back when I was that young. So it's just a privilege to be in their company. We have some exciting news here at London Real. I'm pretty pumped up to announce that Bulletproof Coffee is now the official drink of London Real. Yes, all my guests, and during the show, we will be drinking Bulletproof. I will be serving Bulletproof, and we've got a partnership with Dave Asprey, as you know, the Bulletproof executive, and I'm so pumped to be working with Dave. I really like the way he looks at things differently. He's very controversial, I know. He's got some science out there that people disagree with, but I love his contrarian ideas. As you know, I've been on the Bulletproof Coffee diet now for the last 30 days, and quite honestly, I love it. I wake up every morning, I come into the studio, and I make my Bulletproof. I get out my MCT oil, my coffee, I get my hand blender, my Kerrygold butter, and I just have it. And you know, I had a coffee with milk somewhere the other day, and it tasted wrong. Where's my butter? So I'm just really pumped to be doing this whole thing. You know, the Bulletproof Coffee, it's not really just coffee. It's kind of a diet and then a lifestyle change. You know, I find that I'm intermittent fasting, which means I don't have solid food from dinner the night before till lunch the next day, which is like, I don't know, 15-hour intermittent fast. And I mean, let's be honest, with obesity rates in the world today, I think we all could use a bit of a intermittent fast. So I hope you guys check that out. Also, go to his website, bulletproofexec.com. He's got 250,000 words of free material that he put up there. He doesn't even sell anything on that site. If you want to buy his coffee, go to upgradedself.com, and then you can check all his products out. But otherwise, go get some knowledge, sign up for his newsletter. I'm on it. He's very selective about what he sends out, and just really pumped to be working with Dave. And on that note, if you would like to get Bulletproof Coffee and the MCT oil, and he's got the new upgraded brain MCT oil, and you live in the UK and Europe, you can get it from the folks at Xbrain. Yes, these are our other sponsor who have been so kind, and they provide all the Onnit products in addition to Dave Asprey's bulletproof products, and you can get them in the UK in a matter of days. I mean, literally, you can click on the link, and in 2 days you can be drinking bulletproof coffee. And all my guests and friends, they're all signing up and they're all ordering the stuff. So I highly recommend it. Of course, you can get the Honor products there as well. You can get the Alpha Brain, the Shroom Tech Sport, the Shroom Tech Immune, the T-Force, and Hemp Force Protein. You can add a couple scoops into that in your coffee in the morning if you need that protein. And I get it, man. I try to train every day, and I understand you need some protein in the morning too, and not just fats for calories. So you can get that too. So thanks to the guys at X-Brain. Go there and check it out. And that's it. A couple exciting things happen here at London Real. As you know, we have our daily doses. As you know, we have our teasers and clips for the week. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start releasing a short video every week of just the things that I'm watching, listening to, and reading. So it'll be podcasts, websites, YouTube channels, all that stuff, and hopefully give you guys a little more personal look into what I'm doing during the day, besides working on London Real. So please check that out. We got all sorts of cool guests coming up. We got Irving Welsh dropping next week, the author of Train Spotting. He talks real deal to us about the whole evolution of that project, how he lives in America now, his upcoming books, and of course James the Colossus Thompson hosts that. James never misses a beat, and that was a lot of fun. And that's it. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please subscribe. If you want to come check us out on Facebook, please do. We're on Twitter. If you want to intern for us, there's lots of cool people interning. It's info@londonreal.tv. Send me a message. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. I can take it. I got a thick skin. That's what doing this show does to you. So please send me a message. Let me know how you're doing, your thoughts. On Wednesdays, I'm going to be asking for guest suggestions, so I would love to hear those too. So that's it. Without any further yapping from me, I give you the one and the only Jason Silva.
I love this, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, dude. It's better than most studios.
Is it?
Yeah.
You have to tell me what it's like compared to your other media appearances while you're here.
Well, it just feels like the vibe is like getting ready for a download. You know what I mean? That in the most kind of metaphorical way.
Yeah.
Like we're about to have a download and we're getting ready. Like strap on your seatbelts. Like get ready. It just kind of the setup is more like going for a ride.
Yeah.
Very different than live TV, which is
If you see somebody in the podcast, it
always
feels like
tense.
It's tense before, okay.
A little bit before, because there's this element of like you can't really be that loose. Like, are you ready? Are you comfortable? And it's just different. This is chill. I like this.
Awesome. All right, guys, let's do this, yeah?
Let's do
Okay,
it.
Ready.
all right. Here we go. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose, and how lucky am I? I have two awesome guys here today. I'm spending bank holiday afternoon, about to jump into a very cool conversation with some intelligent, promising, and very positive dudes. So I just wanted to thank you guys both firsthand. It's one of the perks of doing London Real. I get to kind of hang out with cool people. When I was your age, 25, I think 31, I was out doing things, but I was doing them for me. You know, I was trying to make more money. I was trying to be a better martial artist, and I wasn't giving, it was all this way and none of this way, you know?
Right.
So when I meet guys like you, it's just, it's awesome, and it just keeps me optimistic about the future. So just wanted to say thanks.
Oh, dude, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Let me introduce you guys. My co-host today is Mr. Timothy Sheaf, who is currently the most successful free runner in the world. You hate it when I say that, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So good there.
You've probably seen him on MTV. He has his own YouTube channel called Flow, where they pay him to make videos with different people like the famous stuntman Damian Walters. I see him on these O2 commercials, which is like a phone network here, promoting touch rugby. I've actually stopped watching television because I don't want to see Timothy come up on the screen. He has a whole series of videos called Life in a Handstand, which are kind of actually dark, and he walks around and lives his life literally in a handstand. He's homeless in a handstand on one. Anyways, definitely check him out, but he's most famous for his relatively few but amazing appearances on London Real. So.
Yes.
Thanks.
Love it here.
Thanks for
Thanks
being
for having
here.
me back, yeah.
I hope you come back again. And our guest today is Mr. Jason Silva, who is a futurist, a television personality, a filmmaker, and a performance philosopher. I think The Atlantic described you as a Timothy Leary of the viral video age. I think that's probably pretty accurate.
I love that description, actually. It makes me giggle because I freaking love the Timothy Leary, and I just think that they caught it with that.
It's
they
cool.
caught at least my aspiration with that description. So.
Right. It's good too that you're comfortable with that too, because some people get compared to these people and they're like,
Yeah.
But that's good. You got to roll with it. You were a presenter on Current TV for a long time, 2005 to 2011.
Yeah.
So you know how to do this job better than I do. You have a new series on Nat Geo called Brain Games. I want to talk about that definitely.
Great.
You're best known, I think, though, for your viral videos like Radical Openness, The Biological Advantage of Being Awestruck, both of which I watched earlier.
Awesome.
I'm pumped up because of them.
Awesome.
Jason Silva, welcome to London.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here in London. I'm excited to meet you guys, and I have to say I love this whole studio setup you got going on. The vibe is perfect, man.
Awesome,
Positivity all the way. Like it.
Cool. I couldn't imagine you coming through and not being on the show. So for me, it was like obvious, no-brainer. I think we had spoken
Thanks.
like a long time ago. But
Yeah.
you were in New York. Are you based in New York?
I'm
Or
based
LA?
in New York these days. I lived in
Okay.
LA for 5 years, but ever since I started the Nat Geo project, I kind of relocated to New York, and that's been kind of like the base. I keep coming back there to sort of anchor myself.
Yeah.
But I've really kind of been traveling the world really for the past like year and a half. Actually, those videos acted kind of as springboards because when the videos went viral, my philosophical espresso shots just took a life of their own. You know, they just started making like these ripples, and people were like paying it forward and sharing the videos with their friends and their friends with their friends. And before I knew it, I'm getting all these inquiries for like, come speak to us, come talk to us about imagination, come talk to us about creativity. I mean, it's just like been insane. So I kind of feel like my home is the airplane these days.
Wow. I mean, that's what and you these viral videos, you call them like shots of philosophical espresso, which I think is pretty accurate. But how did that start? And did you start shooting them on your own? And did they get bigger and bigger? And I'm guessing you didn't have this means to an end in mind.
Yeah, no, well, it's funny because you know how Joseph Campbell always used to say, follow your bliss and doors will open for you where there were no doors open before, you know, where there were no doors actually. Like it's almost like that scene in Beetlejuice where they like draw a door and then they knock 3 times and a door opens in the concrete. But it really does feel that way. Like I feel like when you find your calling, when you find your voice, when you find your bliss, you know, it's almost like the role of consciousness in the construction of reality, like exacerbates, you know what I mean? Like people always talk about how in quantum mechanics people say, you know, the observer changes the world in the act of observation, and I feel like that stuff plays out. That stuff is felt in a very visceral way when you find your bliss. You know, it's all of a sudden the world becomes a sort of canvas that's full of clues, and you can read your way through it, as Stephen Johnson used to say. It really does feel that way, and so for me it was like I had been working at Current TV. I got my feet wet with the whole citizen journalism, do-it-yourself media. I kind of felt that coming. And when I left Current, it was like, you know, starting Current was like winning the lottery, working for Al Gore, being on TV.
Yeah.
But the problem with Current is nobody watched it. It was a little bit ahead of its time. And it was when I really left the network, after 4 years, mind you, of like building my networks in LA and growing my sort of extended creative family there and feeling like I was ready to cut cords with the mothership, which is what Current was. I felt that online video had finally come of age. And so I felt like now the time was prime to do your own content. People weren't going to roll their eyes at you if you said, I'm leaving TV to go do web stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like by the time I did it, people were like, oh, cool, what are you going to do? And then I was like, what am I going to do? You know, and it was just this kind of decision to go back to my philosophical sort of roots and my philosophical sensibilities, which is like, you know, I went to school for philosophy and film. So I wanted to go back to that. Like, I want to make content that informs and inspires. I want to make content that the format itself of the content I want to do is built around the way I communicate. So the philosophical espresso shots, it made sense because I when I get excited about an idea or about a topic, you know, I go on these rants. I always have since I was a little kid. I mean, since, you know, it's middle school. Like if I'm excited, I want to explain to you what excites me, and it usually takes me 1.5 minutes to do so. It's just like a thing, just like
You've got skill there, definitely.
for whatever reason. Like there's a mixture of just passion. I've always been a voracious reader. My mom was an English teacher, so I am relatively articulate. But so it was just like, okay, I want to start like filming these riffs that I always have, and I'll start like seeing if I can then later kind of visually animate them, so I can put people in my head. You know, see sort of if they can visually see the stream of consciousness in imagery, it can really create a kind of synesthetic effect in the viewer.
It's so important to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. You want to capture people's attention, capture and manage their attention for 2 minutes. And it just so happened that people's attention spans on YouTube happens to be, you know, like 2 minutes or less. And so I was like, this could work for me. And I worked with some really talented editors as collaborators in the beginning. But it was very important to me to be very specific and hands-on and kind of micromanage the editing process, because I was like, I'm very specific about the kind of imagery I wanted to see, the kind of juxtaposition of extremes, the molecular scale imagery and the galactic scale imagery, put the micro next to the macro and just create this kind of synesthetic kind of almost psychedelic digital experience. It's like taking the blue pill in the Matrix and seeing how deep the rabbit hole goes. Yeah. It just became an exercise in that, a kind of indulgence in that. And so when I saw the reception that people had, I felt, my God, I was successful at getting people to feel what I was feeling when I shot those videos. And I was shooting them in the park, I was doing them myself. But the fact that people were responding that way, I was like, oh, I've hit a nerve here. It's working. Language is an attempt to put you in my head. It's your attempt to put me in your head. Like that's what language is. It's an attempt to smash the sense of separateness that separates people. It's an attempt at merger. Language is like, it's kind of like sex in a way, but outside of the context of physical bodies coming together. But when people communicate, they're trying to merge. And
it's like mind reading. It's like telecommunication kind of, but we do it through making
completely.
Explosive
But
sounds.
many times language has these limitations. Terence McKenna and Rich Doyle talk about ecodelics or psychedelics and how these chemicals, they basically encourage the innovation of language. They push language to its boundaries because they force people to try to describe the ineffable. When people are ecstatic or inspired, they're more inventive in their use of language to describe said experience. And I think using these visuals and the music in my mashup videos was a sort of further attempt to convey the ineffable experience of subjectivity. So
do you think
I could go on a rant? Pause for a second.
You just did. That was great. Language. Terence McKenna talks about language a lot, and we talk about ayahuasca on this show, and a lot of times with psychedelics, which are very similar to what you do is presenting. He says that language limits us because we can't describe what's going on in our brain. And since you use language to communicate, do you find it as a medium to be? Does it hold you back sometimes?
Well, I think language is a tool.
Okay.
Just like writing is a tool, just like photography is a tool. It's an instrument. It's a piece of technology. I think most people don't think of technology that way, but that's one of my messages. Is I think of technology the way Kevin Kelly does. He says, if we didn't have the technology of the oil painting, we wouldn't have Van Gogh.
Yeah.
That was the channel through which Van Gogh expressed his subjective experience, his perspective on the world. That's the way we saw the world through his eyes, was thanks to the technology of the oil painting. If we didn't have the technology of the musical instrument, of musical annotation, Beethoven's genius wouldn't have been able to unfurl upon the world. Yeah. Language and the alphabet just is one of those tools, one of those instruments that we use to merge with one another, to share subjectivity. Film, perhaps, is the greatest because it combines everything, right? It combines the alphabet and oration, and then it combines like visuals, and then it combines like music. I mean, really, to me, watching a film like Inception in an IMAX theater, with a particularly receptive consciousness, is one of the greatest kind of psychedelic meditations that is possible for a human being. To contemplate the nature of reality, like by watching a false reality genre film like Inception, like The Matrix, like The Truman Show, like The Game, and experiencing those ideas through the prism of cinema is, to me, one of the greatest kind of psychic explorations that human beings can do. So I guess these are just tools to explore our own consciousness, tools to explore other people's consciousness, tools for self-referentiality as well. As Kevin Kelly says, language turns the mind, a feral mind, into a tool that can now think with purpose and deliberation. Language allows the mind also to perceive itself, right? Through these kind of hierarchies, okay, so I know that I am a mind. My mind is I. This whole idea of like recursion and self-perception, I think, also has a connection to language.
Wait, you're talking about cinema. Is there going to be that next level of medium that we're going to create as humans that's going to be better than cinema? Where you really are in that movie?
Yeah, dude, I absolutely think so. I mean, there's a book by Gene Youngblood called Expanded Cinema. And he says that cinema reflects mankind's historical drive to manifest his consciousness outside of his mind, in front of his eyes. So it's this idea of putting ourselves in front of ourselves to reflect upon ourselves. Infinite recursion, again, self-mirroring.
Right, okay.
Douglas Hofstadter says that our ability to perceive ourselves comes from the fact that our brains create virtual models, internal models of the external world, but that external world includes the brain that's making the observation, and it is that self-mirroring, that inevitable vortex of self-mirroring in which a sort of causal eye is kind of birthed into existence. I made a whole video about it. So I think we push the envelopes of our art in order to do that, to explore the self. And I'm particularly interested in transmedia technologies, or technologies that basically create situations in which you're sort of intent or participation can sort of change the narrative in which you're losing yourself in, whether it's in the analog world or in the digital world. One experience of that was Sleep No More in New York City. It's an interactive theater experience based on Macbeth and like a Kubrickian film, and it's this like interactive space that is non-linear and has like 25 rooms that are like thematically constructed intimately with like amazing music that follows you around. And then you walk in and out of scenes where actors are acting out scenes of Macbeth, but they're out of sequence, and you can follow the actors along from room to room, or you can go your own way and choose your own adventure. But everything has been constructed to somewhat connect itself to the larger story. So it's like you can open a drawer and find a picture with like blood on it, and then think, was this connected to that scene that I caught in that other room? And it's like this, it's like you're inside of the movie in this like dreamlike environment, but you are like the main protagonist, and everybody wears a mask when they're in it, also in Sleep No More. So you're kind of like a ghost, right? Because nobody can see you. And the actors will not acknowledge you either. So you can go up really close during a scene and like stand next to them and stare in a voyeuristic way, but they will not acknowledge you, and you have a mask. So imagine how safe it is. It's like being a ghost swimming inside of a narrative. So it's like if you were watching a movie theater and you could sort of dive into the frame and then be swimming around and exploring the space, that's kind of what Sleep No More is like. So it's a glimpse of, I think, at the very least, the kind of consciousness, the adventures in consciousness that will be available for us with these new kinds of non-linear, immersive, interactive narratives. Now, when we can do that in virtual reality, that'll be cool.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like Sleep No More is like the analog version of virtual reality, I think.
What if like a movie was shot? That's mind blowing. Makes your mind just move over. You gotta like, if there was a movie shot and you could pan around with like a mouse around the whole movie, but it would take you to the scene and it would just be in one location, but you could watch it from any angle, because they've got like 3D or 360 video, haven't they? I've seen a few music
that
videos.
You can move around and see like different
the whole
parts.
video you can look at different things.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if new kinds of technologies of rhetoric, narrative technologies emerge when the technology allows for it. So, you know, when the printing press came out, then the sort of the paperback or the format of the novel, you know, television, the sitcom, you know, this movies, the screenplay, 120 pages, 1 minute per page, you know, tells the average story with beginning, middle, and end. So I wouldn't be surprised if, as new technologies emerge, new creative ways of telling stories will sort of be born as well. So.
It must be that way. You know, one of the things that I first heard about when I first heard the concept of the singularity, I think was coming from you. Like a couple of years ago, after I saw you on Rogan, I saw your videos, and I was just wondering, for people that don't know, which are a lot of people out there, if you could define the singularity, and then define, you're kind of a rare guy, is that then you are just shipping in the singularity. You're like, let's do this now, and this is going to make us better. Where there are a lot of fearmongers out there, and a lot of critics are like, Jason doesn't talk about the risks. So
well, look, man, I think that anything we do with technology ultimately acts like a sort of scaffolding or a second skin. So technology is this extended phenotype, like the termite colony is to the termite, and it extends our thoughts, it extends our reach, it extends our vision. You know, there's cognitive philosophers that actually make the case that technology is actually a part of the species, like literally. It's organic. It's like the spider's web is a part of the spider. Nobody would say that the spider's web is this like weird technology that the spider's doing, tinkering with nature. No, it's birthed from the spider, just like our creativity and our instruments are birthed from us. And then it's like we create these tools to then extend the boundaries of how we express ourselves. Like we were talking about oil painting and instruments and alphabets before. People talk about the singularity as being sort of the ultimate convergence of biotechnology and nanotechnology, in the same way that we saw kind of singularity when language was born, and the singularity of information technology with sort of the internet and connecting human beings together and transcending time, space, and distance. But like with biotech, we're literally having, gene sequencing is going 3 times faster than Moore's law. And with biotech, we're learning to master the information processes of biology. And biology is basically software that writes its own hardware, something that computers could never do. So when our genes become sort of blank canvas for the artist, when our genes become this thing that we can kind of that can birth a new generation of artists that can write genomes the way Blake and Byron wrote verses, as Freeman Dyson used to say, what does that even mean? You know, when I can take like the raw material that constitutes what each of you are, and that becomes the literally like the blank piece of paper for us to sort of author, like we become gods. You know, Kevin Kelly says we are aspiring gods, we are amateur gods, and I think he totally gets it. You know, it's not about being heretical by using these terms, but it's saying this is what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Carl Sagan says we are the frontal lobes of the universe. So we are the universe being aware of the universe. Just like the brain can perceive itself, well, on a sort of macro level, we are the universe perceiving itself. And these moments of sort of mental expansion and then seeing the fact that, with our biotechnology, we're manipulating biology. With nanotechnology, we manipulate matter at the level of the atom. The whole freaking thing becomes a creative universe that wakes up, a creative universe that comes alive. And so the singularity is just ultimately a kind of metaphor used to describe the ineffable and indescribable nature of a universe, a creative universe, accelerating in its capacity to be creative. Terence McKenna said the universe is a novelty engendering universe. It's a universe that sprouts complexity, sprouts new possibility. Kelly says technology is the seventh kingdom of life, subject to the same evolutionary forces. Pierre de Chardin, the Jesuit priest, talks about the omega point, this complexity leading us towards this kind of rapturous transcendence of all previous limits. Eric Davis, who wrote in Technosis, she said that eventually the human design process will achieve a kind of infinite velocity where everything becomes linked with everything else and matter becomes mind. Because that's really what's going on. We take in matter of low organization, we put it through our mental filters, and we extrude it as space shuttles and iPhones.
Yeah.
So when you look at the stuff, you see that the rhymes of McKenna and Timothy Leary saying that computers are the new LSD, that technology is how we actually expand the boundaries of the mind. So you see, you're like, wow, like Kurzweil's singularity is the same as Pierre de Chardin, the Jesuit priest who was tripping out talking about the omega point, which is the same as Timothy Leary talking about us going from worms into butterflies and transforming ourselves. And it's the same as McKenna talking about a universe that engenders more and more novelty, and is the same as Kevin Kelly's technium. So you see the academics and the writers and the scientists and the sort of psychonauts all saying ultimately the same thing, and as Isaiah Berlin said, to understand is to perceive patterns. So you start to see the patterns, and it's just again, it's humanity, it's certain minds just noticing the same thread, the same common denominator, which is kind of this move towards that something. It's like staring into the sun. It's hard to describe, but I think we're going in that direction.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and for the future of technology, every time something new is announced, like I've seen you mention the plane as well.
Yeah,
that's exciting. But
it
moves forward.
The plane. What was
we'll
the plane?
go into that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
We talk about the Boeing
787.
787.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I can briefly mention that. Most people. There's a great line, actually, I should probably read it to you. There's a philosopher, actually, he's here in London. His name is Alain de Botton. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Alain de Botton. So he's one of my favorite guys, and he is a pop philosopher. He wrote a book called Religion for Atheists, where he says that museums have a responsibility to create spaces for contemplation where people that are non-believers can still have religious experiences or encounters with the sacred or encounters with the epic, which is a thing I totally agree with. He also wrote an amazing book on love called On Love that's spectacular. And he has a book called The Art of Travel. And in it, he meditates on, I guess he's really meditating on hedonic adaptation, which is our inability to sort of perceive or to become viscerally affected by those things that we become accustomed to. Yeah. When we habituate to something, we stop being awed by it. And it's really tragic. Because
it's the same way with people eating meat, killing animals.
Yeah,
it's reversed. It's habitually the other way. Whereas
we're completely insensitive to the fact that these animals are suffering. I couldn't agree more, and that's why I support in vitro meat. We can talk about that.
Yeah. But you can be that way about anything. I mean, they interviewed people that have won the lottery and guys that had their legs blown off in Afghanistan, and they found after a year
completely
they were back to kind of the same
normal
steady state. Yeah. Well, and that is a bit of hedonic adaptation.
Yeah. But so the thing about airplanes, I love to travel. Mostly because it radically deconditions my thinking. It thrusts me in a place that I've never been before, and I see a different cultural operating system, and I'm reminded of the consensus trance of the world that I normally live in. I'm excited that I'm reminded of the sort of frameworks of reality and the limitations and our sort of inability to see new possibilities for ourselves is in many ways the consequences of the spaces we find ourselves in. We change our space, you change the outerverse, you change the innerverse. Yeah. So he's talking about just airplanes. Airplanes have the capacity to help us transcend time, space, and distance. When you're on an airplane, you get to cross oceans of sky. And so one of his meditations is this wonderful thing that he says, he's talking about being in flight, right? He says, there is not much talk about the clouds visible up here. No one thinks it remarkable that somewhere above an ocean we flew past a vast white candy floss island, which would have made a perfect seat for an angel or even God himself in a painting by Piero della Francesca. In the cabin, no one stands up to announce with requisite emphasis that out of the window we are flying over a cloud, a matter that would have detained Leonardo.
Yeah.
So true.
I was
Isn't it?
just like, holy moly.
Yeah.
So I when I go to airports, I try to listen to beautiful music and stare at those machines and marvel at them.
You're flying through the air at nearly Mach 1, right? And breathing. And travel is such an important part of expanding your mind.
Yeah,
and when you
completely.
travel, you learn about yourself. That's what I always tell people.
Yeah.
When you go to
Yeah.
other places, you think about yourself differently and question why you do things the way you do things.
Of course. Well, and the thing is, here's where I find, again, finding the analogies and finding the patterns between all these attempts to, the search for sort of psychological spaces for us to go to, whether it's illumination, ecstatic illumination, taking the journey, taking the trip, taking the physical trip, the psychological trip, the psychedelic
Can I just
trip.
ask if,
Yeah.
with technology, it's going so fast and so far, is it taking us any closer to that, though? That is...
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to tweak
seeing
the
more
neurochemistry
things.
of our brain in
Yeah.
order to expand our
But can we do
consciousness
that?
in
Like,
some way. Well, I hope that we can.
You think that you'd support that?
That I would support what? Tweaking our neurochemistry?
Yeah, if you could genetically make people happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy
that's...
called David Pierce. He wrote a book called, an online book or journal called The Hedonistic Imperative, where he advocates using biotech and nanotech to basically engineer Darwinian suffering out of existence.
Oh, man.
Using nanotech to literally create outrageous states of consciousness for ourselves.
But you have to find enlightenment yourself. Like, that's a journey you're on. Like, to genetically modify that, you'd lose the whole aspect of it.
When you change, I mean, sometimes just thinking a different thought changes your neurochemistry.
Yeah.
So is that cheating?
I think so, because you have to find it. You change your thought yourself. If chemistry is changing your thought,
But if our technology is us and there is no separation and what is without is within and the atoms of this are the same as the atoms in me and the atoms and the chemicals we make are the same. So
but I don't
it's
think
not
we're any
cheating.
happier than people that didn't have any technology that lived in fields years ago.
I think we have radical new possibilities for self-expression.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's so exciting.
But yes, look, I agree.
we get to
Hedonic
get out of.
adaptation is still a problem. You know, we may have amazing airplanes and jet engines and skyscrapers, and a lot of people still go to work bored most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's true.
Is that the principle of your videos, to snap people out of their hedonic? What do you call
Yes.
it?
Well, the principle of my video is, as I say, they're like digital trips, you know, or as my friend Maria used to say, they're video pills. You know, you take the pill and it does something to you.
Yeah, you have to watch it a few times to like.
One of the lines that I always use in my speeches, because it applies so well, is a line by Tom Robbins. And Tom Robbins wrote an essay about the plant genies. So what he was talking about was psychedelic experiences, right? He was an explorer and seeking altered states of consciousness. And one of the things that he used to say was, the plant genies cannot manufacture imagination or wonderment. They don't create it. But what they can do is pull you so radically out of context that you are then forced, because of the change in context, to gawk in amazement at those ubiquitous everyday wonders you're culturally disposed to ignore. Now, even though he was talking about plant genies, that quote, you take away plant genies and you say, taking an airplane to an African safari, does the very same thing. It doesn't manufacture imagination or wonderment, but taking that trip to the African safari will pull you so radically out of context that it will force you to gawk in amazement at the ubiquitous everyday wonders you're disposed to ignore. You'll stare at the elephants, you'll stare at the jungle, and you'll gawk at something that's normal there. The airplane, you know, the elephant is normal. It's a normal thing. If you live there all the time, you would ignore it.
Yes.
But a radical change in perspective, a sort of different context of observation will force you to be perpetually and continually astonished.
Doesn't sleep do that every night? But we're so habitually used to sleep that dreams are just, oh, that was weird, but I'll wake up and get on with my day.
We
Every
quickly
day
forget about it. But
you go on such a trip.
Yeah,
man.
well,
Like,
dreams are real when you're in them. I mean, the movie Inception said that, right?
Yeah.
When you're in the dream, it's real.
It's so
you
real.
create and perceive your world at the same time.
but shouldn't that do it to us every night? Then we're like pulled out, but we're so habitual.
Yeah,
that it
we
doesn't
quickly
work
get
anymore.
busy. I read this essay on Aeon magazine recently about attention, about like controlling and managing attention as like the answer to everything.
Yeah.
You know, even though it was like, I think it was, not to get off topic, but I think it was,
There's no off
I think it was
topic.
Henry Miller. Henry Miller said, even a blade of grass, when given proper and complete attention, becomes a magnificent world in itself. You know, like it's all about what we're paying attention to. You know, Darwin said, attention, if sudden and close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement. So, like, if we were open to all that there is to sort of ravish us at any given moment, we would be inspired all the time, but we'd probably get run over by the car because we failed to see that the don't walk sign is on there. So the world forces us to modulate what we pay attention to get by. Yeah. But the consequence of that is that we don't often get to be in states of awe and marvel. And
you trained out of those.
Yeah. And
which have a biological advantage, which is one of your videos.
Yes. Which is, I think that the argument of that video is that regular encounters with the sacred, with experiences of such perceptual expansion that they smash our mental models of the world. In other words, they smash the autopilot that we're relying on and force us to take in radically new stimuli that stretches the boundaries of what we have ever seen before. That those experiences leave us with a residual gratitude, with a residual thankfulness and altruism towards others and all these benefits, and with a sense of purpose. Because we come out of those awe-like experiences feeling like, we're here for a reason, and we matter, and there's more to us than conventional thinking allows, and there's a hidden door, and there's a rabbit hole to fall through. Yeah. Wow, there's more.
And a community, too.
Yeah. There's a feelings of poetry and grace, It's like a feel-good movie, except it's happening, to you,
But it's such a gradual thing. You still get you have experiences, and you're like, that's changed my life forever.
Yeah.
And in a few weeks, you're kind of back to your old ways.
But then a few weeks, you're in the supermarket. I need to buy some tomatoes. This is my perpetual battle in life, is to figure out how to handle the necessary trivialities and banalities of existence.
But it builds up over time. You gradually become more and more like after each experience, you chip away a piece of your ego or whatever.
You try, right? You stop tuning into the broadcast of the ego and you start tuning into the broadcast of the whole. But that's very hard because part of the reason we create these wonderful tools in a lot of ways is to sort of outsource banal things like. Thanks to my iPhone, I don't have to remember phone numbers ever again. It frees up my brain to go write poetry like Hemingway in the park. But the irony is that it stores all my phone numbers, but instead of me using that free time for like contemplative rumination, it just makes me free to get busy doing something else, often banal. This is the challenge. Are we going to use these tools to free our creativity, or are we going to use these tools to just get more efficient at being really busy?
Do you think because of these like airplanes and the technology and the internet that say us as people, in compared to say 500 years ago, Middle Ages in England, where you might have one moment in your life where you have this epiphany, when I don't know what happened, you were the king and you were crowned, or you saved your daughter from this, and then these days we have all this stuff around us where we could have 100 of those a year, or not.
No, I agree with you. I think the potential is there. We've never had such possibilities to sort of have religious ecstasy, for the most part, there's not like religious persecution, people are not getting like murdered in masses, it's like we're not experiencing genocide to the degree that has been experienced in the past. Steven Pinker often talks about the fact that most people don't know this because, our media, if it bleeds, it leads. But the world has actually never been less dangerous. It's actually never been more safe. The chances of a man dying at the hands of another man for the average citizen is the lowest than it's ever been.
For England, it's like 1/50th of it. He was here 3 months ago, so
I love Steven Pinker. So I think that what that proves is that, we shouldn't spend so much of our time worrying, and we should spend more of our time actively seeking in safety illumination, right?
Do you think you were born too late to witness the singularity? Do you ever think that, damn it, I've only got 60, 70 years, depending on biotechnology, and I'm going to miss what's really going to happen in 150 years?
No.
Dude, I have quite a bit. I've had quite a bit of anxiety about not having enough time. I think anybody who's sort of sensitive to those things probably thinks of that, but there's this anxiety and this fear that there is so much unlived life inside of me that I'm terrified of having that being limited in any capacity. There's a great documentary called Flight from Death that I recommend to everybody to download. It's based on the work of Ernest Becker in his book The Denial of Death. Basically says that the human condition is defined by our anxiety about being mortal beings. This is another one of those things I often talk about because it's so true. We emerged from nothing, right? We have a name. We have self-consciousness. I'm conscious of the fact that I exist. Consciousness of self. deep inner feeling. There's this excruciating yearning for life, for self-expression. And yet with all this, cut to the cemetery, you know, the most horrible thing that could possibly happen is going to happen. You know, there's something profoundly ironic and horrific, frankly, about that idea.
That's a conditioned feeling, though. You
Well,
don't have
no,
to
I
feel
think
that way
it's a, I
towards
think
it.
it's well, I think it's a consequence of our sort of intense self-awareness. I think most animals don't lose sleep over the fact that they're immortal beings. I mean, they get scared when under attack, but they don't lose sleep over it philosophically. I mean, I've been in situations where I, as Roland Barthes would say, all of my desires have been abolished by the plenitude of their satisfaction. So I've been in a situation where I'm in love, where I have found the one and she's in my arms and I feel complete and everything is perfect. It's rapturous, it's beatific. And even in the throngs of that moment, I feel sad. I want to weep. And she'll say, why are you sad? I'm like, because this moment is temporary.
It's fleeting.
Because this moment is fleeting. So,
But we're always afraid of change and what we don't know. And every time it comes about, it always turns out it was all right in the end. And like I think death is just another one of those things that we're so afraid of it, but it's another thing we don't know.
Well, that's that's poetic. I respect that. I think that you're spot on because, I mean, I do tell people all the time, don't be afraid of change. You know, you have to embrace change. But I think in this instance, it's different. It's not the change that I'm scared of. It's if I'm in a moment that I want to hold on to, I want to decide when the moment ends. So I guess it's about, maybe it's not about immortality, but maybe it's about a yearning for an indefinite lifespan. Maybe it's about a desire to, you know, I decide when I'm hungry, I decide when I'm full, I decide when I cease to exist. That would be the goal.
So what are you trying to do before you die then? I mean, what is the ultimate Jason Silva accomplishment? I know that's such a general question, but like, do you have these things in your mind that like, I need to get this done. I need to get my book done. I need to get this next film done. I don't know what.
Well, I see my life as a series of scenes that I want to inhabit. You know what I mean? So it's like, as a little kid, I think the reason I worship films is because when I watch movies, I had religious experiences, right? I had what I never had in the synagogue, I had when I watched movies. Those were my temples. Sitting there in the dark, I was able to sample ecstatic illumination. I was able to sample subjective spaces that were overflowing with just everything, right? Grace, poetry, gratitude, ecstasy, really.
Such a powerful medium. People don't give it the credit.
They don't. They don't give it the respect they do. It's the same thing with many other aspects of life. People ignore rituals and they just overconsume and they're gluttonous. But anyway, so my thing with cinema is I would see a movie and I was like, I want to live that scene. I want to have that moment. It could be a moment in a movie. It could be a line, a dialogue between two characters. It could be a smile between two characters set to music, and it'll stay with me for 15 years. And I'll go and like live that. I remember when I first watched Vanilla Sky. I love Cameron Crowe, by the way. He's one of my favorite directors. Cameron Crowe, Danny Boyle, these guys, you know, they're brilliant. You know, obviously, the director of Inception, Christopher Nolan, is brilliant as well. But when I first watched Vanilla Sky, here was a movie about love, about the longing for love, about the longing to transcend our loneliness. It was also a science fiction movie about the desire to transcend our mortality. I mean, the guy gets cryogenically frozen and thrust into a virtual reality environment that is like a lucid dream that's sculpted moment to moment. But ultimately, that movie was about him wanting to hold on to these perfect moments with Sophia, which is played by this beautiful Spanish actress called Penelope Cruz, set to, you know, Cameron Crowe's gorgeous, transcendent soundtrack, you know, whether it's Sigur Rós or Peter Gabriel. Every frame between these two characters was just enhanced by this music. I wanted to live inside that lucid dream with her. I wanted to literally be him with her. I wanted to be around her voice, her accent, that smile. I don't think it's a surprise that, you know, a few years later, my first real love of my life girlfriend when I was graduating college was this beautiful Brazilian girl that looked exactly, well, she actually looked like a composite of Penelope Cruz in Vanilla Sky and Virginie Ledoyen from The Beach, from the Danny Boyle movie The Beach. And this girl, she was Brazilian. She was an exact composite of those two characters, brunette with beautiful smile like that. And she had the accent of Penelope Cruz in Vanilla Sky. And I would have her feed me lines from the movie on
No way.
Oh, absolutely. We would lie down in bed, like lying down on the pillow, having like pillow talk. And I'd always have my camera, back then it wasn't as high res as now, but it almost gave it like a vintage quality. It was like, it was like Instagram before there was Instagram for video with like the blurry footage. And I would film her and I'd be like, oh yeah, tell me, I would feed her lines from the movie, and it was just so haunting to watch that now. I don't think it's twisted at all.
Do you feel like you manifested that? Like you
Absolutely.
Brought that,
it completely felt like some kind of like cosmic manifestation.
When you notice those moments.
It was like I wanted to have those moments so bad. And here's the thing: I believed that it was possible.
You have to believe, otherwise
you have to believe. You have to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately, George Carlin, actually, there's a great interview with the comedian George Carlin. He's talking about how he achieved what he achieved in life, how he was able to actually live out his dreams. And he talks about a book he read called Psycho-Cybernetics. And that book was saying that the brain is essentially a machine, a goal-achieving machine, a reality-creating machine.
Yeah.
And Psycho-Cybernetics talks about the power of creating impressions that put patterns in your brain that orient the direction that it goes in. So he was saying, for example, like when he sees something cool or when he thinks of something cool, he writes it down or he takes a picture. So that's like the first impression is I thought of something cool or I see something beautiful, inspiring. That's the first impression. The second impression is take a picture of it or write it down. That's like mark the moment. Second impression, take a picture, write it down. The third impression is later on that day, look at the picture you took, look at what you wrote down. That's the third impression. So that's 3 impressions, right? You had the epiphany, you wrote it down, or you took a picture of it. Number 2, 3, you reflect upon it later. After that third impression, you've literally primed your brain with like a kind of archetype for that it will then unconsciously be on the lookout for. And I think serendipity is just filling patterns unconsciously and then having moments in which it seeps into consciousness. Because what will happen is you have the idea, one impression, you write it down, take a picture, second impression, third impression, you think about it later. Let's say it was the girl in the movie. I watched the movie, I thought about the movie, I wrote down of the movie, later I reflected upon the movie. 3 months later, I meet a girl at the bar. She looks just like the girl from the movie, and she talks just like the girl from the movie. And oh my God, how did this happen? Well, your brain was. You might have met her and not noticed her if you hadn't primed yourself with the whole psycho-cybernetics technique with the kind of multiple impressions. So I think there's something to that. There's something about believing that you can create your reality and at least priming your brain to do that. And then your brain will just it'll put the pieces together because the raw material is there. So, if reality is like a soup of the alphabet and just like a screenwriter, right? The letters are there. The alphabet is there. All the screenwriter has to do is pick the right letters and put the right words, and he can tell any story. Yeah. The screenwriter is God. He can author any story he wants. Yeah. The alphabet will allow for anything. There are no limits to what he can conjure up and bring into being. So if the raw material of reality is like that alphabet, and we are the authors of our life, then that metaphor is more than a metaphor because we can script it. You have done it. Yeah. I mean, why do you think I was getting such a kick of hearing your story? You know what I mean? Like just what you were telling me. You were saying, oh yeah, I came here, I moved here, and I was in finance, and then I got inspired from this podcast, and I wanted to start my own, and I did it, and all of a sudden, you're doing it, and here we are talking about it, and this thing that you thought would be cool to do, this thing that you aspired to create is like a living thing. Like this table, if I hit it, it hurts. It's solid. There is a tangibility evidenced here that was sort of uttered into existence by you as the sort of author of your life. And that's
so we can manifest our destiny is what you're saying.
Yeah, those bumper stickers have depth to them. It's just that most people are they think of those ideas in throwaway ways. Oh, it's just a bumper sticker. My mom had one. Your minds are like parachutes. They only function when open. I'm like, dude, if you read that sentence and pay attention to it, there's some profound truth in those sentences. And most people don't know how to apply that, unfortunately.
Do you believe in synchronicities then, or do you think it's just because you're noticing things that are in your reality?
Well, I think it's either or.
For me, I think it is, and Einstein even summed it up. He said, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. So when you notice these coincidences and synchronicities, that's a sign, and I've read in a lot of things, that's you're on the right path. When you notice these synchronicities, you're like, oh, I must be doing something right. And generally, you're in a good mood and whatever anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's something really beatific to that because, again, quantum physics says that the observer is required for reality to exist. Yeah. So, and Joseph Campbell says God is that which exceeds all our intellectual capacity. So it's not this bearded guy, but it's just a great metaphor for that which we don't yet understand. But what if we are able to understand it? What if we are able to say, oh, synchronicity is just a glimpse or a brief moment of awareness of the subconscious processes of psycho-cybernetics, of you creating these impressions for yourself that will guide as orienting signposts through life, that will be telling you where your path is. And that ultimately the hero's journey is like quest physics, is that movie Eat, Pray, Love, which is based on that great book that resonates with so many people. It's a very deep film, it's a great deep film. And at the end, when she says, quest physics, if you're willing to believe that if you're willing to leave everything you know behind, if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and push yourself outside the constraints of your life and just go on a crazy adventure, and if you're willing to treat everybody you meet as a teacher, and if you're willing to believe that everybody has something wise to teach you, then the answers will be given to you. This is her whole thing about quest physics.
I 100% believe that, though.
But think about it. Like, are they really there to teach you something? Or if you're willing to believe that they're going to teach you something, then they end up teaching you something. So the consciousness, the intent changes the truth of the circumstance.
But I witnessed that with friends, though. You witness them getting into the same situations and meeting people. But I don't know if then, again, that's your consciousness, your awareness of the situation. You're going to perceive it your way. But for me, I think even when they're not aware and they don't believe people are teachers, I can still observe it from outside and think he's trying to teach you a lesson, but you can't tell your friend that.
But if he didn't notice the lesson, then the lesson was not taught. And then the person didn't teach them the lesson.
So the mind needs to be open.
But if we were taught that from childhood and that was a school subject and it would be common knowledge and everyone would look out for situations like that. But because it's not as common.
Yes, not everybody's born, having parents that encourage them to think that way.
Not many people at all. But if it was a school subject and it became an ordinary thing, then everyone would go through life and everyone they'd meet, they'd be observant.
Great stories, though, have those lessons in them. Harry Potter has those lessons in them. The Hardy Boys, the Bernstein Bears. I mean, when I was in 4th, 5th grade, that's what storytelling is all about, right? It's about profound lessons that you should sort of internalize, sugar-coated in an entertaining kind of ride. Right. That's not too challenging, but that is embedded with deep truths.
Like dreams, right?
Yeah.
And people say dreams is lesson, but it's the hardest one to learn.
Yes, and most people, unfortunately, they lose their childlike sense of wonder, and so the normal storytelling devices embedded with deep truths that worked when you were a kid don't work when you're a grown-up. Unless maybe you're high on cannabis, because we do know that people will get stoned and all of a sudden they're, oh my God, this story's so profound. The air of profundity that cannabis bathes people in, I think ultimately is it's smashing their preconceptions and it's smashing their set of expectations and their mental models and allowing them to perceive the world afresh in a certain way. Carl Sagan used to write a lot about his love of cannabis. But that's one way, I think, maybe for some people to get there. Another way is to create media that does the same thing. So I think that I try for my videos to be mind expanding. I think that this podcast, for example, is an exercise in a mind expanding session. I think you can't listen to this for 3 hours and not be stretched outside your comfort zone. You know what I mean? So I think we're all trading in the same currency. The currency of mind expansion, the currency of expanding consciousness, expanding awareness, the currency of the search.
The addiction right now, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that we're all playing that game, and it's the reason why. It's like we just met and we feel like we already know each other.
A little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So what is that Silva project that I was asking you about? I know, or is it undefined?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on. So here's the latest update. So what started as these non-commercial mashups, the first couple videos, the Awestruck video, Beginning of Infinity, and all of these that Joe Rogan was gracious enough to spread out into the world, and I guess it's how you discovered them, right?
Yeah, it is.
So those videos were great because they kind of put me on a map within a new community. And all of a sudden, I was invited to do a lot of talks. I visited all these places all over the world, and it was great. I was in the International School of Dubai, where the high school girls have a club of like imagination and wonder dedicated to the Imaginary Foundation, which makes the t-shirts that I wear.
Wow.
And all like Jason Silva video clips, and they're all like become wonder junkies.
That's the Jason Silva Club in Dubai.
Yeah, in
How old
Dubai.
are they?
They're like 16, 17, and they know all my videos by heart. It's just absolutely insane, and I've spoken to corporate executives for IBM and Intel, who are the people that are creating amazing technology that allows all these incredible things and these ideas to be shared across cyberspace. And I'm talking to them about what they're doing. I'm telling them what they're doing and hopefully making them inspired and awestruck. So my life changed. I've traveled the world and given all these talks, and that's been fantastic, right? Then National Geographic. Oh, then TED Global. The TED conference asked me to create an original video. Radical Openness was created for TED Global.
Oh,
okay.
So I got to show that. They opened the conference with that. That was last June.
Wow, that's big. Are
Kind
you
of
a
an
TED
amazing
fellow? Did they ever invite you to be? Or
I'm not a fellow, but I'm
just
kind of a
graduate?
regular. I used to
Okay.
go and you write articles about TED for Big Think or Huffington Post. So I used to get a press pass, and then finally I got to be on the stage and show
you
my video.
opened to TED Global
I
with your
opened
video.
TED Global
Jesus.
and then did a Q&A on stage. It was amazing. And that led to invites to the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. I spoke at the Sydney Opera House again, and like, holy moly, right?
Yeah.
And then National Geographic, they caught wind of my videos, and they were doing this brain series called Brain Games, and it was a spin-off from a 3-part special they did 2 years ago, and they were like, come host this series about the brain. We love your energy. Now, granted, this is a mainstream TV project, so it's not necessarily as sort of insane as my short videos.
Yeah,
Brain Games is something that everybody can play along and follow along. It's meant to be really digestible, but also really smart and challenging at the same time, if that's possible, right? We worked on it for 8 months. The show premiered in the States, and it blew up. It was like the highest rated new series premiere in the history of National Geographic Channel. So, of course, they want to do another season.
Is
It's
it on
all
English?
good.
Do you know National Geographic?
Say again?
Is it on the English one?
It's launching in the UK June 3rd.
Oh,
That's why
it's
I'm
like-
here. So I'm here
Oh,
promoting
okay.
that show.
Okay.
So now, aside from my talks, like this show is like, it's a much more accessible brain, Jason Silva, basic neuroscience experience, and hopefully people see it and people like it, and then even more than that, hopefully they go look up my videos afterwards as well.
Did you think about not doing TV? I mean, you used to be in TV. Okay, this is
Yeah.
a different kind of
Yeah.
TV because you were creating shows, but you're creating this show. But did part of you say, I don't want to be the TV guy, or were you like, yes, let's do this?
Well, I wanted to do it, but I was aware that there's a lot of moving parts in a TV show. There's a lot of people that are involved. A lot of people have to sign off on stuff. You don't have,
And you
necessarily-
micromanage your earlier videos,
Right.
you said. And
I'm
so
a
you
complete micro. My earlier videos, I'm the writer, director, producer, and co-editor. I hire an editor, but I direct him. You know what I mean?
and every frame has to be right. and
Yes,
every-
yes. Here, there's producers, there's other writers, there's other editors. So everybody's got something to say, which is fine. It's a collaboration. But the artist in me likes to control everything. So I'll do a collaboration as long as I can have my own side project. That makes it fun. I can enjoy brain games, and it's a blast as long as I seed power and be cool with that, right?
Right.
And then the stuff, which is fine. That's the essence of collaboration. My videos are still the place where there is absolutely, it's just Jason Silva's way or the highway, and that's fine. It's a place where I want to say something very specific, and I want to edit it very specifically, and that's cool. So Brain Games has taken off. It's premiering now in the UK June 3rd. It's premiering in Australia, and then globally, actually, on Nat Geo in like September.
That's awesome.
And then I also am working with a company called Revision 3,
Okay.
which they're awesome because they're like a digital video production house in San Francisco, and they just launched a new like premium YouTube channel called Test Tube. And it's basically going to be like for inspiration junkies, science stuff, short form segments. And the guy that runs it, who's also British actually, Tom Lofthouse, he was like, I want to help you make more of your espresso shots. Right now you produce one every 3-4 months. I'm willing to give you the resources, the post-production, the editors, the visual library to take your videos to the next level. And I was like, I'm in, I wasn't getting paid for this. This was just, they were giving me the resources to make the videos. So separate from Brain Games, I started a new YouTube channel actually 4 days ago. It's called Shots of Awe. So I want everybody listening to go to youtube.com/Shots of Awe
As
and
in
subscribe.
shots of espresso.
Yeah, like the philosophical espresso shots. So now they're Shots of Awe. And we had the video came out 3-4 days ago, and we've had 88,000 views on it, so it's pretty good. Let's see what
Excellent.
happens with that. I'm going to be releasing these videos weekly now.
Wow.
So we're going to have up to 22 shots of awe over the next 6 months coming out weekly. So again, I implore people to check it out.
And this is through Revision 3. They are doing the producing.
They're
Okay.
helping me with all the production.
How many have you
I still
shot?
have full creative control, which is great.
Oh, that's perfect. How many have you shot?
We shot for 3 days in upstate New York. Basically had a download like this where we shot hours and hours and hours and hours worth of footage.
Of you talking?
Well, we just had a session, like a shamanic session. We got ourselves into the mental space that we needed to be in. We had Canon 5Ds, and we had a list of topics: grief, loss, singularity, creativity, the nature of creativity, etc. We had a whole list. We talked about the stoned ape hypothesis of evolution. We talked about the power of language. We talked about synesthesia. Basically, they were like, write out everything you think is interesting right now, and we'll riff on each of these things. And then we work to make those into videos. And actually, have you seen the newest one?
No.
Oh, do you ever play videos on the show?
Well, I will.
Okay.
Sometimes I can splice them in later.
Okay.
So I might do that.
If you want to.
What's it called, the first one?
Well, it's actually just called Awe.
Okay.
And if you go to youtube.com/shots-of-awe, it's like there's a trailer for the YouTube channel, and then there's the first video, Awe. So if you want to play it during the conversation, it's pretty beautiful.
Cool. We're going to feature your channel on our YouTube channel, so
nice.
We'll put it up there.
Great.
That's awesome. So you get into just a crazy,
well, it's like this
Jason mood, and then they just film you, and obviously get the audio, which is probably key.
Yeah.
And then they
proper labs, proper Canon 5D, go into the woods.
You're outdoor.
Minimal distractions. You want to just get to a place where nothing is going to mess with your flow. You were talking before. You have a YouTube channel called Flow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm obsessed with flow. Like you're probably familiar with the term flow, like the sort of the idea of creative flow.
Yeah, you talk. You can tell you're obsessed with flow the way you talk as well. Yeah.
Jazz musicians when they improv, flow states.
Yeah.
Painters when they're painting.
Breakdancers,
Writers
man.
when they're
Some people
writing.
like
martial arts too.
Athletes, martial arts. They all talk about this flow space, right? And so recently, the science of flow space has become very interesting. People want to know because books about optimum psychology always say that flow states are the greatest type of consciousness that humans can be.
Yeah.
It's much better than like money or sex. Being in flow.
You feel like God's flowing. People say that as well. People feel like God's flowing through you, and you're just not even
Khalil
thinking.
Gibran, it comes through you, but not from you. And though it is with you, it belongs not to you. You know, it's like channeling. It's like
in the zone. Yeah. And in Japan, they call it no mind. I think and that's the most blissful state to be.
Yes, and frequently for people that are virtuosos in something, after they've spent their 10,000 hours at it, whether it's martial arts or violining or ballet, the 10,000 hours of practice and control are there for that moment in which you let go. As they say in the movie Black Swan, perfection is not just about control, it's also about letting go. So you spend your 10,000 hours and then you get to the point where you shut off the mind and you trust that the knowledge is implicit, and then you can go into a flow state.
Whenever you want.
So the
you think if you log the 10,000, then you can access it?
Well, that would be the hope, right? Like to
be
able to be a flow virtuoso in anything, you still have to have spent the blood, sweat, and tears to become...
Well, you have to be in the right environment as well to be you have to,
to create the right environment. So, anyway, recently in searching for the science of flow states, there was recently some really interesting stuff that was published. So they did fMRI scans on the brains of freestyling rappers. So they had these rappers just riff on an idea, which is kind of similar to when I'm riffing about something. It's unscripted, right?
You are a spoken word artist, really.
I mean, some people have said that, but spoken word artist has sort of this association of a style of performance that I think is different from what I do.
Oh, definitely.
But still, so, and then they compared those fMRI scans with rappers that were reciting memorized lyrics. Now, I have a very verbatim memory for quotes, so I do a little bit of both. I do freestyling and reciting lyrics and remix the recited lyrics with the freestyle. But what they found in those fMRI scans is that the lateral prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for self-editing, actually dims during the flow states. So when the rapper is reciting the non-memorized lyrics, when he's freestyling, the self-editing part of his consciousness is not firing. So it's pure flow. It's free association without a filter. So think about that.
So that you need to be able to
now he still needs to be a creative guy that has a certain lexicon, and the martial artist has to have the technique. But when you get out of your own way, so to speak, the only thing standing in your way is you.
Right, is your own censoring yourself.
Then what happens is that's flow.
Part ego and everything as well.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So you try constantly exploring flow and optimize your own flow. Do you watch it in other people and try to see how they get in their flow?
There's a school, there's a place, or an entity, an organization, people should Google it. It's called Flow State University. Flow State University and the Flow Dojo is a group of scientists, writers, thinkers, and neurologists, neuroscientists who are exploring the science of flow states and creating this think tank to sort of teach people how to get in their flow and running all these flow dojo workshops. Because flow is, all these people that are obsessed with neuroenhancers and neuroceuticals and this idea of like enhancing our cognition, these new generation of smart drugs that are surely going to come online. It's all about this, right? It's all about tapping into your maximum potential, flow states, like how do we get flowing, limitless, right? Like the movie Limitless. And I'm on board for that for sure.
Now sitting right here is the ultimate man of flow here. I mean, what Timothy does is, I guess you've probably logged your 10,000 hours, but you get out and you see like an outdoor scene and you flow into it.
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot rehearsed though. It's not just like you run and like, I think breakdancing has more element of flow sometimes
which is your
when they
background
freestyle,
as well.
which is my background, which helps me put that into free running. But you have an environment and then you have to be creative. You have to think, okay, there's 2 walls here. Most people would just jump, but what can I do that's different? And that's what I'm trying to come up with, a flow. Mine's more of a planned flow of different moves that you've pictured in your head yourself doing and linking.
So do you ever find yourself improvising mid?
There's a bit of that, but no one's. I think that's where the future of the sport is, because it's such a young sport. Not that it's like still filtering through to people that know about it, but I think that's exactly where the future of it is. When you get people are only just starting to log those 10,000 hours maybe, and they're only just starting to like begin. There's a few guys from Russia that look like they do that they just throw their body and they just know they're always going to end up in a certain way and they can just go with the flow. But that's the
because you can't be invested with the outcome if you want to create a beautiful piece of art. You can't be obsessed with what other people are going to think. You can't be obsessed too much with the result. I mean, you ultimately just have to go and be in the moment.
Enter it.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, isn't that how you make beautiful things?
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's why people say you have to lose yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, people say, I don't want to lose myself. I like myself. I'm like, what they mean by lose yourself is that like, forget the critic. Forget, self-consciousness is not the same as being conscious. Self-conscious is when you go up on stage and you get nervous and you're all self-conscious and you think everybody's looking at you and scrutinizing you. And, you don't want to be self-conscious. It's not fun. It's also not attractive to other people. People who are really self-conscious just come across as like, self-obsessed really and just awkward. But
guilty,
so when people say,
sometimes.
we're all of us, man. But when people say, losing yourself, the whole point of losing yourself, they're saying is get rid of the self-consciousness. So remember why you're there and do what it is you love doing. And it's not about impressing them. It's about sharing in your ecstasy, sharing with them your ecstasy. Like, that's why you supposedly do what you do. And if you're doing it in a public way, it's only because you love it so much you want them to sample why you love what you love, And ultimately, that's what it should be.
It's also forgetting your social conditioning, though, as well, because especially with the free running, you've seen a lot of YouTube videos, you know what moves people commonly do. And so it's so quick for people to instantly want to just repeat that. It's removing everything you've seen ever and then getting into that moment of just actually flowing is also losing the...
It's hard, man. That's why people do meditation. That's why they do yoga. That's why, there's all these ways. TM.
Take smart drugs.
Smart drugs, I mean, it's always been about like, it's like, okay, I'm going to go warm up and jog in order to warm up, or I'm going to get this many hours of sleep to get myself the way I need. I mean, this is the kind of diet that energizes me. People know their own subjective, experience. Eric Davis wrote an article about experience design, and he says, as we come to understand the neurophysiology of lived experience, right? The psychopharmacology of lived experience, how the chemicals that are required to have a certain kind of like mood or subjectivity. As we come to understand that, then we can learn to modulate that, the same way we can like raise the volume on our music, when we're in a certain mood, in the car, relax. Oh, I love this song, raise the volume on it. And then you're immersed in the music. Other moments you're like, I don't want to lower it, If you can up the volume and lower the volume of your TV or your car stereo system, why can't you modulate how open you are to existence?
So you're all for this, technology, pharmaceuticals, whatever.
For increased modulation and our ability to control and shape our subjective experience, our ability to inform our subjective experience. So like when I get on the subway in New York, it's like turn the volume down. I don't want to think about the fact that I'm underground. I don't want to think about the fact that I'm scared that one of these guys is maybe gonna mug me. Like lower the volume. Put aside the resonance with the set and the setting. But when I go to the park here in Kensington Park, I'm like, open up, Jason, open up, open the pores, let those trees in, let that sun in, let that sky in, let that London isness in, Stop you looking at the specific and instead see the universal. But, ping-ponging between the openness and being closed, that modulation is tricky.
Yes.
Everybody has to figure out what works for them. I would be interested in standardizing that and creating some kind of technology. This is the pill that ups the volume on how you perceive reality. This is the one that lowers it. I mean, people say psychedelics are for that exact reason, but who knows?
And there's dangers there, but you see the positives so outweigh the negatives that you want to charge forward. And
I mean, I think that fire can cook our foods or burn us.
Yeah.
And I'm not about to say ban fire because there's a risk. Like, there's always a risk.
It does make
in
food
anything.
worse, though.
Raw vegan.
Raw food diet is the best diet, and cooked food, if it's 60,
Yeah, well,
if it's 60
there's
approximately
some people that say that it wasn't until we discovered fire we were able to actually cook the animals that we
Yeah,
were hunting
yeah.
that
And
our brains actually grew.
I hear that's a very valid point
Yeah.
to get to the stage we're at, but I think to further our consciousness
Right.
is to stop doing that, because you can live perfectly healthy, happy.
That's fair. That's a good point. I mean,
without
if I had a vegan chef that made me amazing lentils and quinoa
you'd have it every day, right?
I would have no problem.
Everyone
with that.
says that.
I might do that too.
It's just kind of complicated to fit it into the life.
But when you realize how much a part that plays in spirituality and evolving consciously,
well, that's true.
If you're looking at yourself, you're looking at who you are and the things you've done. I'm not trying to be that preacher guy.
No.
Must have. Everyone's heard this talk, right?
That the diet changes how you see the world.
It does completely.
It could be a good way to get you in the flow as well.
Yeah. And the way I said this before, when animals are slaughtered, you don't know what energy is going around their body, their consciousness, and then you ingest that. You don't know what you're taking in, and it's
point made. Score one for the vegan.
Well, I know everyone's heard it before. I hate to go there, but it's a valid point.
It needs to be said. It needs to be said. Sorry, Jason. A very London real question is: if you could pick up the phone and make a phone call to the 20-year-old Jason Silva and give him a bit of advice, and it can't be keep making those cool videos, what would you tell him?
You know what's really funny, man, is that I actually, when I was 20 years old, I recorded messages to my future self, which is the opposite of that.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, dude, it's funny. If you watch videos of, like, I used to have these salons in my house in Venezuela. We had a beautiful deck, and it looked kind of like Hollywood Hills, if you imagine that geography, just green, and everybody lives in the hills. And I used to have my friends over. We would videotape each other having these conversations. So it was like a non-broadcast podcast.
Yeah.
It was like we just literally had the cameras. We'd interview each other. You know, we did what teenagers do in high school parties or get-togethers. And, you know, we would get into this headspace. It was very similar to Charles Baudelaire, the poet. He wrote about Charles Baudelaire's hashish house in Paris, where the artists and the poets and the scientists would all get together and drink all this wine, and they would smoke all this hash, and then they would transcend their individual selves and go to this other place, right? Enter the space of kief, complete beatitude. I'm not saying we did that, but, you know, I do like Charles Baudelaire's accounts of that. But anyway, in my salons, we did used to videotape each other and interview each other about all these ideas, and a lot of the times the insights that I would get that would emerge, that would be occasioned by the space we were in, I would often say, oh my God, Jason, don't forget this feeling, don't forget this moment, this is what it's about, this is truth, this is illumination, like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, it became, the moments of clarity were so intense, and I was obsessed with immortalizing those insights. Like, that's always been my thing. This obsession with bottling these moments that are pivot moments. Moments that are going to shift the way the rest of my life unfolds are important to, like, hold on to. You know what I mean? Because if it's a pivot moment, you don't want to forget it the next day. You don't want to say, oh my God, I've had a transcendental shift in how I want to live my life. And then you go to sleep and the next day it's gone. No. And I think that's
why your videos exist, I think, is because you find it so important to make them happen at that moment.
And you're able to summarize them so small.
So you're just saying you did give advice to yourself at 20. You were saying
to my future self.
To your future self. To remember this moment or remember the important things.
Yeah. The irony is that when I watch them, I'm simultaneously like, oh, that's so cool. At the same time, I get a little freaked out because I'm like, wow, time has passed. I mean, I like that I remembered all those things. That's cool. What I don't like is like, oh man, I'm 10 years old right now.
It shows you how much
it's just
less time left.
I mean, 30 is still really young. But.
And a slight corollary to that question, before we wrap up, is what advice would you give to the 20-year-old that wants to grow up and be Jason Silva one day, or wants to just wants to expand their mind and I don't know, all these new things?
Yeah, well, my mom was a teacher. She taught at the American school in Venezuela. Her name's Linda. She's awesome. If she's listening, I love you.
Hi, Mom.
She probably, but she is the kind of teacher that they make movies about. You know that teacher that like 20 years later, the student will still write a letter and say, "You changed my life. You changed how I see the world. You changed." I mean, she's a holy moment person. She is. That's what she is, and that's how everybody describes her. So
what was that movie about that teacher in South Central Los Angeles? He was that Hispanic guy played by Edward James Olmos, and he was like chopping up the hamburgers.
They've made a bunch of those movies. Yeah, so I think that. One of the things she always encouraged, I feel very blessed that she was my mother, because she always used to say, like, that what you're passionate about, that your bliss, that was in her mind, God or the infinite or the inexplicable or the ineffable guiding the way. Like, listen to your heart, listen to your passion. And she had really only one rule. I mean, that was like her rule was very simple. It was just like, be kind. If you're kind, practice random kindness and senseless acts of beauty, then like the sky's the limit. The only thing you're not supposed to do is hurt other people. But like, other than that, bro, like, it's infinite creativity, right? And she never said you can't. She said whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way you're right. That's what she used to say. So I feel very lucky, and so that's the same advice I think I would give to anybody, right?
What if the afterlife is that feeling of bliss that you feel, and it is completely 100% feels that way, and they're just glimpses of when you live right, you find this position. But we've forgot that we've come from the afterlife, whatever. And so if you live right, then you go back to that place and you can live there because you proved yourself on earth. Like it's a theory. I'm not saying that's what I believe.
Well, look, man, I'm slightly envious of people of faith.
That can believe
and
that.
I think that religion has really messed things up in so many ways, and religious violence and religious jihad and religious bigotry is.
But that's because religious.
So I find it grotesque. Okay, I find it grotesque, and I think history has shown us that religion has a very bad rap. However, the religious who are kind and interpret their religion as an act of love and a way of living with kindness and rapture, there are those people. And even though I'm not necessarily one of them, I envy the reassuring way in which they experience the world, because they seem like they're not afraid of death. And that's kind of something that I can't relate to.
What if
it must be nice not to be afraid,
What if what you believe comes true? Like, you believe that up to this point, but when it comes to death, you don't. That theory doesn't go beyond that.
Let me put it this way. When it comes to the idea of consciousness persisting after death, I'm not convinced, but I hope I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong, brother. I think you might find it as well.
I hope I'm wrong too.
I think you just want to live forever and you keep creating forever.
Yeah, well, look, that's the thing. I don't want to not exist. So, my sense of self, looking upon the world, having infinite reflections and resonance.
Is that not ego? You must have.
I don't know if it's ego, because the moments I like the most are egoless moments, but they still require a self to experience them. I think when people talk about ego death, they're not talking about death. I think ego death just means the part of you that is selfish gets out of the way. But it's still there's still an observer.
We need a new word for ego, because ego is such a polarized
it is
term.
I agree.
But it's because
the
it's
personalities
necessary.
come within it, and it's necessary.
It's necessary to create something, and we need a slightly different word that doesn't have all this baggage with it. Because if you say I have an ego, then you're
you can't discuss it with some people because it sounds quite
like egoific.
But this has been rad, man.
Dude.
Thank you for having me,
Jason Silva. Everything I hoped today would be was that and more.
Oh, good. I can't wait to share this, because I think this has been the most rich and in-depth conversation I've had recorded since my appearance on Joe Rogan.
Wow, that's quite a.
I have to be completely honest. It's just the nature of where we took the talk, that format. Ooh, it's what I like, man. And I've been meaning to go back on Joe Rogan. I just haven't been to LA, but I'm glad we did this, because this has that spirit, man.
Dude, it's all about getting in the flow. So thank you, Mr. Sheaf, for being here.
No problem.
I appreciate it. Nice to have a flow guy, a free-running flow guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Definitely check out Brain Games, which is going to be Nat Geo. You said June 3rd here in the UK?
June 3rd here in the UK, cool. National Geographic Channel.
I love that channel, and I just love the fact. I love the fact that people are going to meet you through this, and then they're going to get to see other things you do.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm very excited to connect with your audience, and I would love for them to check out my new YouTube channel, youtube.com/shots of awe, and also I'm on Twitter @Jason Silva. Please tweet at me. I try to read most of them and reply as many people as I can.
SILVA.
Awesome.
SILVA, yeah.
SILVA.
Exactly. Most people think silver. No. SILVA @Jason Silva. Cool.
Awesome. Check him out there. You can subscribe to the Flow channel as well.
Yeah, youtube.com/flow, youtube.com/livewire. I've got videos on both coming up.
Okay, Livewire is your handstand videos. Flow, Flow is all your stuff that you're doing for YouTube.
Yeah.
And you said you got some comedy stuff coming out?
It came out on the weekend.
How's it?
On Friday.
Yeah?
The community love it.
Really?
It's and they think we're real, because we were playing like arrogant stuntmen, like it was behind the scenes of what we shoot, and so it was like the Office style.
Awesome.
But yeah.
I like the fact that he's always like pushing it to a new place. You know, a lot of guys would just keep doing free running parkour
keep jumping
videos.
off walls. I'm trying to add,
so they're like doing this behind the scenes ego humor, or you're doing your life in a handstand stuff. So I don't know, that's all cool. So please doing that. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please subscribe. And if you want to see all of our faces, if you want to see Timothy dressed in white, come see us on YouTube channel London Real TV. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Join the party. A lot of people want to know about interning. We got about 15 interns worldwide. So if you want to do that, send me an email at info@londonreal.tv.
You racking them up? 15
yeah, it's a lot of fun because they just get to be part of the show and they get to learn
Who's
a lot.
Andrea? Shout out Andrea.
Dre's our main guy, PR coordinator, and 3 of them have gone on to the industry to work full time. So it's just all good. It's this whole like self-perpetuating awesomeness. So that's it. Thanks to Xbrain who sponsored this episode. Check them out. Xbrain.co.uk. They have all the Honor products, the Bulletproof Coffee, etc., etc. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
If we can be of help in any way to anything in your future, please just ask.
Thanks,
because
buddy.
It's just cool seeing what you're doing, man.
Likewise, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sweet guys. All right, until then.
It's about the journey. Yeah.
Very good.
Got it.
All right.
It's well done.
Peace, guys.
I like that. Cheers.
All right.
Peace.
Welcome to London.
How do you make that funny?
That's
That's not funny at all.
I'll make it funny. You show up tonight, and I'll
I'm
show
going.
you how you make it funny.
It's done.
I don't know. I'd say about 80% of the time I succeed, and then 20% of the time the audience goes,
That's pretty good odds.
yeah, that's good odds.
Do you do like a